Close your eyes and step into a 1920s Italian-American kitchen. The scent of simmering tomato sauce fills the air, the radio hums softly, and a grandmother's hands move with practiced grace over dough dusted in flour. These were the kitchens where love was measured in ladles, not cups. Back then, every dish told a story, of journeys across the Atlantic, of families rebuilding their lives one meal at a time. But as decades passed, many of those recipes vanished, tucked away in forgotten cookbooks or lost to modern shortcuts. Today, we remember the pasta and pizza, but what about the dishes that time erased? From hearty stews to sweet almond pastries, we're uncovering 25 Italian-American recipes that once defined an era and exploring what they meant to the families who first brought them to life. They came with little more than hope, a few coins, and recipes carried in their hearts. Between 1880 and the 1920s, millions of Italians crossed the Atlantic, seeking a better life in the promise of America. Most arrived through Ellis Island, tired and seasick but clutching memories of home. The smell of basil on the breeze, the warmth of bread fresh from the oven, the rhythm of family meals that had once defined their days. In crowded tenements of New York, Boston, and Chicago, kitchens became sanctuaries. The ingredients were different. Olive oil was scarce, ricotta was rare, and even the flour felt unfamiliar. So they adapted. Eggplants replaced veal, American tomatoes were sweeter, and canned goods became a lifeline. Out of necessity, Italian immigrants reinvented their own cuisine, blending old-world traditions with new-world resources. What emerged wasn't pure Italian anymore. It was something uniquely Italian-American. Every dish carried the tension between memory and adaptation. A Sicilian fisherman's pasta might become spaghetti with tinned sardines. A Neapolitan stew turned into meatballs stretched with breadcrumbs and onions. These weren't just recipes, they were acts of survival. Families gathered around wobbly kitchen tables, passing bowls of steaming food that reminded them, even for a moment, of home. Food was the thread that stitched communities together. In neighborhoods like Little Italy, the air smelled of garlic and roasted peppers. Local grocers stocked imported goods when they could, olive oil in dusty bottles, wedges of hard cheese smuggled through ports. Sunday dinners became sacred, not just for faith, but for identity. Children might learn English at school, but at the table, they spoke the language of sauce, bread, and laughter. And yet, there was always contrast, the dream of assimilation against the pull of tradition. While fathers found work in factories and mothers took in laundry, the kitchen was where the old country lived on. Over time, these humble immigrant meals began influencing the broader American palate. What was once foreign soon became beloved: spaghetti dinners in church basements, tomato sauce bubbling in suburban kitchens. But in the process of blending in, something else began to fade. Many original recipes, the ones born from improvisation and hardship, never made it into cookbooks. They existed only in memory, in Nonna's hands, in the smell of Sunday gravy, in the stories whispered while stirring sauce. From Italy to America, food was more than sustenance. It was a love letter to the past and a bridge to the future. These early immigrants didn't just bring recipes, they brought resilience, flavor, and identity. And though time has dimmed their names, their dishes remain. Traces of a culture reborn through hunger, hope, and home. The 1920s were an era of contradictions: jazz and prohibition, glamour and grit, new dreams built on old foundations. For Italian-American families, this decade was more than history. It was the heartbeat of survival, transformation, and pride. Inside those narrow kitchens of tenement apartments, the sound of a city in motion blended with the clatter of pots, the hiss of boiling sauce, and the laughter of families determined to build a better life one meal at a time. The kitchen was the center of everything. It was where mothers turned scraps into feasts, where fathers returned from long shifts in factories and sat down to the only luxury they knew: a warm plate of food that smelled like home. Olive oil glistened in reused bottles, garlic hung in braids by the window, and flour dust floated like light in the air. Each meal was a small rebellion against hardship, a declaration that love and flavor could survive even in the roughest corners of the city. The Roaring Twenties brought change, not just to America's streets, but to its stomach. Refrigeration was rare, so food had to be eaten fresh, preserved by salt or ingenuity. Italians mastered the art of stretching every ingredient. A single chicken might flavor soup, fill ravioli, and stretch into sandwiches the next day. The scent of fried onions and tomato paste simmering in cast-iron pots was a constant comfort in neighborhoods filled with uncertainty. Women were the quiet architects of culinary adaptation. They learned to cook with what the local markets offered: canned tomatoes from California, American wheat flour, and new vegetables like iceberg lettuce, which hadn't existed in their villages back home. Yet, even as they embraced these novelties, they held tightly to tradition. Meals were communal, loud, and unhurried, even when money was short. Bread wasn't bought. It was kneaded with hands that carried stories across oceans. Children grew up between worlds, one foot in modern America, another in their parents' old-world rituals. Breakfast might be toast with coffee instead of polenta, but dinner still meant pasta, stew, or roasted peppers. Families dined under the soft glow of gas lamps, listening to jazz on the radio, while grandmothers hummed ancient Sicilian lullabies. Every dish was a fusion of two lives, the old Italy remembered and the new America imagined. Outside the home, Italian eateries began to appear, modest taverns serving spaghetti and meatballs to both immigrants and curious locals. These restaurants introduced Americans to flavors they'd never known before, even if those flavors were already evolving. The sauces were sweeter, the portions larger, the names slightly changed to suit the local tongue. In that cultural exchange, Italian-American cuisine was born, familiar yet new, traditional yet transformed. Despite the optimism of the Jazz Age, life wasn't easy. Prohibition pushed many into makeshift basement dinners, where wine was poured discreetly from hidden bottles and laughter drowned out the worry of tomorrow. The kitchen became a refuge, a place where time slowed, stories flowed, and recipes were taught not through books, but through touch and taste. By the end of the decade, the Italian-American kitchen had become a symbol of endurance. It told a story not just of food, but of faith, faith that family, flavor, and heritage could outlast hardship. Amidst the noise of the roaring 20s, these humble kitchens roared too, with the music of sizzling pans, heartfelt prayers, and the aroma of something truly timeless: home. Time has a quiet way of erasing things, not all at once, but slowly, like ink fading on an old recipe card. The same happened to many of the Italian-American dishes that once filled tenement kitchens and family tables in the 1920s. What was once ordinary, a stew, a bread, a sauce, became rare, then forgotten. The reasons weren't cruel. They were simply the result of change, progress, and the ever-turning rhythm of modern life. As America industrialized, so did its food. Homemade pastas gave way to boxed spaghetti. Bread baked in neighborhood ovens was replaced by factory loaves wrapped in plastic. Canned soups, powdered sauces, and pre-packaged meals promised convenience, a seductive offer for families tired of long hours and short evenings. The art of slow cooking began to lose its place in homes that were learning to move faster than ever before. Then came the Great Depression and the wars that followed. Scarcity reshaped kitchens again. Ingredients once central to Italian-American cooking, olive oil, imported cheese, and cured meats, became luxuries. Housewives adapted, substituting margarine for butter, shortening for oil, and canned meat for the real thing. Some recipes simply couldn't survive these substitutions. Their soul was tied to ingredients that no longer existed in their true form. Generations shifted too. The children of immigrants, eager to blend in, often turned away from the foods that marked them as foreign. Lunchboxes filled with garlic and greens were swapped for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, safer, more American. By the 1950s, the grandchildren of the 1920s cooks could name more television brands than family recipes. Food that had once symbolized belonging became a relic of embarrassment, tucked quietly into memory. Restaurants played their part in the transformation. The rise of chain eateries standardized Italian food into predictable forms: spaghetti with sweet tomato sauce, lasagna dripping with cheese, garlic bread brushed with butter instead of olive oil. The flavors of Calabria, Naples, and Sicily blurred into a single, marketable version of Italian. The dishes that didn't fit that mold, the humble, regional specialties, simply disappeared from menus and minds. By the time the world moved into the era of frozen dinners and microwaves, the 1920s kitchen had become a ghost. Handwritten recipes yellowed in drawers. Family cookbooks went missing in moves. Nonna's instructions, a pinch of this, a handful of that, didn't translate into measurements for the modern cook. And so, they faded. Yet, the disappearance wasn't a total death, more like a deep sleep. Beneath the noise of fast food and convenience culture, those lost recipes still linger, waiting to be rediscovered. They live in whispers, in a grandmother's story, an old photograph, or the unexpected taste of something that feels hauntingly familiar. The recipes may have disappeared, but their memory has never truly gone. Point 1. Pasta con Lusard. Sicilian immigrants once made this with fresh sardines, fennel, and raisins, a savory sweet symphony of the sea. But in America, fresh sardines were scarce, and canned versions lacked the same soul. As tuna and anchovies took their place, pasta con Lusard quietly vanished from everyday tables, remembered only by coastal families who could still taste the old Mediterranean wind in their kitchens. 2. Veal spiedini. Threaded veal rolls stuffed with breadcrumbs, parsley, and cheese once sizzled on immigrant stovetops. But post-war scarcity and rising veal prices pushed this delicate dish out of reach. As beef and chicken became cheaper, the art of rolling and grilling spiedini faded, replaced by faster meals that didn't require patience or perfection. 3. Eggplant rollatini. Before lasagna conquered America, this was the queen of Sunday dinners. Thin slices of fried eggplant wrapped around ricotta, baked in bubbling sauce. When lighter diets and convenience cooking took hold in the 1960s, rollatini was labeled too oily, too old-fashioned. Yet for many, its taste remains the true definition of comfort. 4. Trippa alla romana. Honeycomb tripe simmered in tomato, garlic, and pecorino, a humble dish born from poverty and pride. Once cherished for using every part of the animal, it disappeared when organ meats fell out of favor. As supermarkets sterilized taste, tripe became too strange for modern appetites, its legacy surviving only in a few stubborn family kitchens. 5. Pasta e ceci. Pasta with chickpeas, thick, earthy, and nourishing. It was the dish of factory workers and miners, filling and cheap. But as processed foods replaced handmade meals, the slow simmer of ceci gave way to instant noodles and canned soups. Now, its memory lingers in whispers of garlic and rosemary. 6. Bacala fritto. Salt cod, soaked and fried until golden, once marked Christmas Eve for Italian families. But desalting bacala took days, and modern cooks traded time for convenience. Frozen fish and takeout meals ended the ritual, and with it, the anticipation that made each bite sacred. 7. Escarole and beans. This simple stew of bitter greens and white beans once filled the air with the scent of garlic and broth. It vanished as canned soups promised home-style flavor in minutes. But no can ever match the taste of something simmered slow, seasoned with patience and pride. 8. Breccia. Thin beef rolls stuffed with breadcrumbs, pine nuts, and cheese, tied, browned, and simmered for hours in red sauce. It was a celebration dish, full of texture and warmth. But long cooking times didn't fit modern life. Today, Breccia is more often a memory than a meal. 9. Frittata di macaroni. Leftover pasta, eggs, and cheese fried into a golden pie, a symbol of thrift and ingenuity. Once every Italian-American family's weekday lunch, it faded when leftovers became shameful, not smart. Convenience killed creativity, and the frittata went quiet. 10. Sfinghi di riso. These tiny rice fritters dusted with sugar were sold at street festivals and church bazaars. But as donuts and cupcakes took over, sfinghi disappeared. The old hands that shaped them aged, and no one learned the recipe. Their sweetness now exists only in memory, warm, fleeting, and gone too soon. 11. Cardoon alla Siciliana. A cousin of the artichoke, cardoons were once braised with lemon and breadcrumbs. Immigrants grew them in backyard gardens, but as city living expanded, the plant itself became rare. Without fresh cardoons, the dish withered away, leaving behind only the faint echo of its nutty, tender flavor. 12. Sausage and pepper sandwich. Before it became a festival cliché, this was an everyday hero: spicy sausage, sweet onions, and crusty bread. But prepackaged sausages and soft rolls changed everything. The flavor stayed, but the soul, the handmade sizzle of fresh links on a cast-iron pan, slowly disappeared. 13. Polenicon fungi cornmeal simmered for hours, topped with wild mushrooms and olive oil. Once a peasant's meal, it vanished as instant polenta replaced patience. The old ritual, stirring for an hour, tasting, waiting, belonged to a slower world that no longer exists. 14. Pepperonata, a stew of bell peppers, onions, and tomatoes, bright, sweet, and meant to be eaten cold the next day. It vanished not because of flavor, but because of time. Few modern families cook meals that improve overnight. Pepperonata requires waiting, a luxury lost in the age of speed. 15. Calamari in humido, squid stewed with garlic and wine, was once a fisherman's supper. But as fresh seafood became expensive and intimidating, calamari was reduced to fried rings in diners. Its tender, soulful version, the slow-cooked one, was forgotten, drowned in breadcrumbs and oil. 16. Pain di casa, homemade bread, thick crust, soft center, baked in backyard ovens. It disappeared when mass bakeries arrived with sliced loaves wrapped in shiny plastic. The daily rhythm of kneading, rising, and baking died quietly, taking with it the smell of real bread that could fill an entire neighborhood. 17. Cannellini with tuna and lemon, a simple salad of white beans, tuna, olive oil, and lemon, summer in a bowl. It disappeared not for lack of flavor, but for lack of pride. The world moved toward elaborate meals, and humble simplicity went out of fashion. 18. Pasta con aglio e olio, garlic and oil, nothing more. It was the poor man's comfort food, light and fragrant. Yet when sauces became sweeter and heavier, this minimalist dish was forgotten. Its elegance lies in restraint, something modern tastes rarely understand. 19. Zeppole di San Giuseppe, golden pastries filled with cream, made every March 19th for St. Joseph's Day. As Italian-American communities spread out, feast traditions faded. Supermarket cakes replaced handmade devotion, and the holiday lost its culinary heart. 20. Lentil soup with ditalini, thick, earthy, and rich with olive oil, a symbol of thrift and health. But in the age of canned soup and diet culture, lentils lost their charm. The dish once served in clay bowls became another forgotten comfort in a world that prefers convenience to nourishment. 21. Sardine sandwiches on hard rolls, lunch for dockworkers and factory hands, salty, briny, bold. As taste grew milder and fishier foods fell from favor, the sardine sandwich disappeared entirely. Yet to those who remember, that bite of sea and bread was pure home. 22. Ricotta pie, lighter than cheesecake, flavored with lemon zest and sugar. It was the Easter dessert of countless families, baked in aluminum pans and dusted with powdered sugar. But boxed cake mixes stole the spotlight, and ricotta pie, delicate and handmade, faded into history's kitchen. 23. Pasta al forno, layered baked pasta filled with cheese, eggs, and meat, the grandmother of lasagna. It disappeared as frozen dinners and restaurant portions replaced family feasts. Once a Sunday centerpiece, now it exists mostly in memory, replaced by convenience, but never surpassed in flavor. 24. Stuffed artichokes, steamed and packed with breadcrumbs, garlic, and herbs, eaten leaf by leaf, slow and patient. When fast food arrived, nobody had time to eat like that anymore. Stuffed artichokes became too much work, too much effort for too little time. 25. Crostally crisp ribbons of fried dough dusted with powdered sugar, the laughter of festivals captured in a bite. Once made every winter, they vanished as store-bought pastries took over. But in some homes, an old woman still rolls them thin, whispering to the past with every twist of dough. Each of these 25 dishes tells a story of love, loss, and adaptation. They disappeared not because they weren't delicious, but because life changed faster than memory could keep up. Yet, somewhere, In the echo of a kitchen long gone, the scent of garlic and flour still lingers, waiting to be remembered. The kitchens of the 1920s were not quiet places. They were alive, sizzling, steaming, laughing. Pots clanged, sauce bubbled, and someone always shouted, "Manja! Eat before it gets cold." The air was thick with garlic, olive oil, and stories from across the Atlantic. Every meal carried a piece of home that no ship could take away. You can almost hear the rhythm of those voices. Women gossiping as they kneaded dough, children stealing meatballs from the pot, grandfathers sipping red wine they swore was just for cooking. Each kitchen spoke its own dialect of love, passed down not through recipes, but through gestures, a pinch of salt, a flick of the wrist, a whispered kosi, like this. No one measured anything. They remembered everything. In tenement buildings, the smell of one family's sauce drifted into another's hallway, mixing like languages. Food was their bridge between Italy and America, between struggle and celebration. The voices didn't just cook, they healed. They reminded everyone that even in a foreign land, flavor could still feel like home. And yet, as generations passed, those voices grew softer. The grandmothers who knew every recipe by heart began to leave us. Their children, caught between work and survival, stopped making the slow dishes. The grandchildren grew up on frozen dinners, their homes smelling more of microwaves than of basil and simmering sauce. The music of the kitchen faded, replaced by the hum of a refrigerator. But sometimes, late at night, you can still hear it, faintly, like a radio tuned to another time. The wooden spoon stirring. The laughter. The hum of an old Italian song. Those sounds remind us that food was never just food. It was memory, identity, and love served warm. If you close your eyes, you might even see them. The women in aprons, the men slicing bread, the children waiting for the first taste of Sunday sauce. Their voices echo through time, whispering a single reminder to anyone who will listen. Don't let us be forgotten. Make the recipes. Taste the past. Keep us alive. Something remarkable is happening. Across America, a quiet food revival is taking place, one simmering pot at a time. Chefs, historians, and home cooks are digging into old family notebooks, stained with olive oil and thyme, and bringing forgotten Italian-American recipes back to life. What was once considered outdated, rabbit stew, artichoke sandwiches, chickpea pancakes, is now reappearing on restaurant menus under the banner of heritage cuisine. But this isn't just about nostalgia. It's about identity, about reclaiming the flavors that built generations. In Brooklyn and New Orleans, young chefs are calling their Nonnas, asking, "How did you make that sauce again?" In Chicago, community kitchens host classes on old Sicilian dishes. On social media, food historians post century-old recipes with pride, showing that simplicity never truly goes out of style. There's beauty in this rediscovery, not just in the taste, but in the connection it brings. A 90-year-old grandmother teaching her granddaughter to roll pasta, a family gathering to make bread with the same recipe used during the Depression, a small-town deli naming its sandwiches after the original 1920s versions. Every act of revival is a story, a bridge between what was and what can be again. Modern life may have traded slow cooking for convenience, but the hunger for authenticity has returned. In an age of fast everything, people are craving what feels real, food that carries history, warmth, and soul. The revival isn't about recreating the past perfectly. It's about honoring it, about remembering that every lost recipe still has something to teach us about patience, family, and love served on a plate. When a recipe disappears, it's never just about the food. It's about the stories, the voices, and the small moments that once surrounded it. Each dish carried something sacred, not just flavor, but memory. The scent of tomato sauce wasn't just hunger, it was Sunday. The crunch of fresh bread wasn't just texture, it was togetherness. Food was the language of love, spoken without words. In the 1920s, an Italian-American kitchen wasn't simply a place to cook, it was the heartbeat of the home. It was where news was shared, blessings were whispered, and laughter echoed through the walls. When we lost the recipes, we lost the rituals too. We lost the habit of gathering around the table with no distractions. We lost the patience to wait for dough to rise, the understanding that good things take time. And something else disappeared, the sense of place. Each meal once told a story about where people came from, the hills of Sicily, the coasts of Naples, the farmlands of Calabria. Food kept that geography alive. Now, many of us eat without memory. The ingredients are the same, but the meaning has thinned, like a sauce stretched too far. Yet, there's a strange comfort in realizing this loss. It means we can still find our way back. Because food, unlike most traditions, never truly dies. It lingers in muscle memory, in old cookbooks, in the faint scent of garlic that clings to a wooden spoon passed down through generations. Beyond the plate lies something greater than hunger, its heritage. And every time we choose to cook something the old way, to honor the hands that stirred before us, we bring back a little piece of who we were. In that act, the past breathes again, and love finds its way home. Revival doesn't always mean replication. Sometimes, it means transformation, taking the old and letting it breathe in new air. Across America, chefs and home cooks are rediscovering 1920s Italian-American recipes and giving them a second life, not as relics, but as reinventions. In New York, a small trattoria serves polpette al limone, lemon-infused meatballs inspired by a recipe found in a 1923 immigrant cookbook. The chef adds a whisper of basil foam, a nod to modern cuisine, but the soul remains pure Nonna, hand-rolled, slow-cooked, and meant to be shared. In San Francisco, a baker resurrects the old pain con olive, the olive bread once baked by dockworkers' wives, but now made with local sourdough starter and heirloom olives. It's a conversation between centuries, rustic meets refined. And in small towns across the Midwest, home cooks are bringing back pasta e sisi, pasta with chickpeas, once a poor man's meal, now celebrated as the ultimate comfort food. With organic ingredients and patience, they're rediscovering what simplicity can taste like when it's made with care. But it's not just the ingredients that are returning, it's the spirit. People are starting to cook like their ancestors did, slowly, intentionally, and with reverence. They're measuring by instinct, not teaspoons. They're tasting, adjusting, and trusting the process. Social media, ironically, has become a stage for this revival, with creators filming themselves making century-old recipes from scratch, connecting millions of viewers to a time when food was both survival and celebration. There's also a growing trend among Italian-American chefs to trace their culinary DNA. They're visiting the villages their grandparents left behind, collecting recipes scribbled in old notebooks, and reinterpreting them for a new generation. A dish once forgotten in a Brooklyn basement might now appear on a Michelin-starred menu. Proof that food memory is a living thing, capable of adaptation without losing its soul. These reimagined recipes are more than nostalgia. They are bridges between past and present, tradition and innovation, memory and imagination. They remind us that history isn't static. It evolves every time someone dares to cook with love. Because when you roll the dough by hand, when you stir the sauce slowly, when you serve it to someone and see their eyes light up, you're not just recreating a recipe. You're continuing a story. And maybe, just maybe, giving it a new beginning.